What's going on YouTube? Ishin from CZR Media here. In today's special video sponsored by Pennzoil, I'd like to talk a little bit about the technology and engineering that goes into developing and racing a NASCAR. Now, NASCAR has never been a racing series that I exactly followed, but spending the weekend with Team Penske and the engineers from Pennzoil has brought a great appreciation for the amount of engineering and time that goes into developing these cars. So first of all, what is NASCAR? Well, NASCAR actually stands for National Association for Stock Car Racing, and there are multiple series within NASCAR. NASCAR series that you might be familiar with is the Sprint Cup Racing Series. Now, it's called Sprint Cup not because of the driving style of the racing cars, but because the racing series is sponsored by the cell phone company Sprint that you're all familiar with. Now, this is kind of interesting fact for me because the company Sprint was actually mostly acquired by a Japanese company called SoftBank. 78% stake of the company was acquired. So now that leads me to think, is the NASCAR house sponsored by the Japanese? Current eligible cars to race in the Sprint Cup series are the Chevy Impalas, Ford Fusions, and Toyota Camrys. Now, all these cars have to somehow represent its production form. So, for example, the fenders on the NASCARs are actually coming right off of production vehicle. Now, jumping straight into some numbers here. On the road course, NASCAR would try to maximize downforce by increasing the aero package on the car to go around the corners as fast as possible, and cars run at 750 horsepower. On the oval track, the aero package is reduced, therefore reducing drag, trying to maximize the top speed. However, each team has to install a restrictor plate which essentially reduces the engine output to 450 horsepower. The tires are provided by Goodyear, and every team uses the same tire compound and tire size. Although it varies by track, each team has about 12 sets of tires per race, and in 2016, they used 533 sets of tires throughout the season. There are no rain tires for oval racetracks. If there's rain, like when I flew down to North Carolina during Hurricane Matthew to see the NASCAR race, they couldn't do the race because it was pouring down on the Saturday when the race was planned for. So the race got pushed back to Sunday and the race went on. Now this is where things get really interesting. On oval track, the front right tire of the NASCAR takes so much pressure that it sees up to 4,000 pounds of pressure just on the front right tire alone. And the right side of the vehicle sees so much more pressure than the left side that they use harder compound on the right side of the vehicle than they do on the inside. If you look at the NASCAR suspension setup on the oval track very closely, the outside tire has negative camber while the inside has positive camber, which is just crazy to me. Aside from running different tire compound outside and inside, the outside tire is pressured at 50 psi while the inside tire only sees about 25 psi, so half that of the outside tire. Now when you take a quick look at the NASCAR wheel setup, it just looks like racing slicks mounted on your traditional steel wheels. If you look closely, there are two valve stems. That is because there is the outside tire that is exposed to you, and there's actually inner tire as well, just in case the outside tire punctures during high-speed runs of 200 miles per hour, that the car does not lose control and go out spinning into the wall. The inside tire would take over in case the outside tire punctures, and that is why there's two different valve stems on the wheel. Another crazy thing about tire compound being different inside and out is that the harder outside compound is made out of 12-inch wide rubber. However, of that 12 inches, 2 inches on the inside is made out of different compound than it is on the outside. The 2 inches, which sees the most pressure of the 12 inches on the outside of the tire, is made out of the hardest material to withstand all the negative camber and all the pressure that the car sees on the oval course. Rims used in the racing series seem like your traditional Stevies with 5-lug setup. I learned over the course of the weekend that the NASCAR racing series used to mandate and check that each car coming out of pit area has 5 lug nuts. However, that is not the case anymore. So I found out that some teams are actually only using 3 lug nuts out of 5 to go out of the pit, because pit time is so critical when it comes to racing that saving 2 lug nuts from bolting in will save you that much time. This fact blows my mind away, because if I'm missing 1 lug nut on my 5-lug street car, I would lose my mind. I'll immediately stop driving the car, bring it back home, and make sure that I have 5 lug nuts torqued down at its torque level with a torque wrench. The fact that some racing teams are only running 3 lug nuts going 200 miles per hour for hours makes you wonder, do you actually need 5 lug nuts on your personal vehicle? I highly suggest that you do, but I'm just saying. The engine oil used in the IndyCar racing series is actually a mass production level oil. That means you can go to any auto parts store and pick up oil off the shelf, and you'll be using the same oil used in Indy cars in your production level vehicles. In NASCAR, things are a little different. Each team can run their own oil as they're liking, and for Team Penske, Pennzoil is their weapon of choice. Although Pennzoil produces special viscosity oil for its use in NASCAR, it uses the same ingredients as the oil you can purchase off the shelf. The biggest downfall with the race oil is the lack of longevity the oil provides. In NASCAR, you don't have to run the engine for 100,000 miles. Therefore, Pennzoil produces NASCAR-specific oil with less restrictions to maximize power output. This is not an issue for a race car engine that only needs to run for a few thousand miles before it is completely torn apart for a rebuild. Unlike their competitors, Pennzoil creates oil from natural gas instead of crude oil. This allows Pennzoil to create cleaner oil where oil molecules are better aligned for engine oil applications, as opposed to crude oil where it's more random and contaminated. If you put this in terms of water, Pennzoil creates water from clean source, as opposed to their competitors who create water from filtering out dirty water. In an oval course, NASCAR engine runs at astonishing 9,000 RPM for hours. In order to withstand this much abuse, Pennzoil race car has a 6-gallon dry sump system in the back of the car. This is mind-blowing, as my Evo, which gets tracked on road course events, only takes about 5 quarts of oil and maybe 6-7 quarts of oil during race weekends. We're all familiar with the most obvious purpose of putting an engine oil in a motor, which is to provide lubrication. But not many people realize that the oil inside a hot engine plays an important role when it comes to cooling down critical components such as pistons, valves, and crankshaft. There was an incident that occurred at Darlington several years ago when Hendrick Motorsports' car overheated and all the water boiled out of the cooling system with several laps to go in the race. While everyone expected the engine to fail, it finished and won the race thanks to cooling that is provided by the engine oil. As for the oil temperature, Pennzoil engineers create a formula that performs best at 230 degrees, which is the oil temperature you would expect in a NASCAR engine during a race. If it's too cold, oil won't provide appropriate lubrication. If it's too hot, it will start foaming up. This is also the reason why sometimes during a NASCAR race, you will see a car following a lead car get away from the draft into the air, essentially slowing the car down, but to increase airflow to cool down the engine oil. I have learned so much over the weekend about engineering and the strategy that goes into racing these NASCARs, and I hope you learned a thing or two from this video. I would like to thank Team Penske for giving us a private tour of their shop, Pennzoil for sponsoring this video, and Joey Lugano, who is the driver for Team Penske, for giving us a private tour of his man cave as well. So thanks again for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video.